Hey, it's Phil Meyer. Let's talk about Samurai on controller. Samurai is all about speed and precision. The job has a high learning curve, but with a little time and patience, you'll be slicing through adversaries like a hot knife through butter. Like all my other DPS layouts, I prioritize Samurai's core global cooldown attacks on the controller's face buttons, so I can maintain character movement with the left analog stick at the same time. Samurai's combat loadout is split across two cross hotbar sets. The first is for single target, and the second is for ranged and area attacks. I quick swap between the two by tapping the right shoulder button. If you're new to set swapping, check out my general controller framework setup guide, linked in the video description. This is probably the most technical controller layout I've planned out so far, and it took extra time to land on its final configuration. Let's walk through the layout, then I'll give you a brief demo of its combat flow. To my Japanese viewers, and I know there are a few of you, forgive me if I mispronounce some of the names in this video. I'll be doing my best. The important thing to understand up front is that Samurai's general flow is to work through its basic attack combos to build up its sen gauge. Each combo grants a specific sen, which, once accumulated, can be consumed to perform devastating strikes. On the single target set, Samurai's combo strings are laid out across both triggers. All three single target combos begin with Gyofu. From there, three combos branch out. Shifu and Kasha are used in succession for the first combo, and Yukikaze terminates the second. These actions all take spots on the right trigger's face buttons. The third combo also begins with Gyofu and is completed with Jinpu and Gekko on the left trigger. The placement of each combo's terminating strike has meaning. Gekko does more damage from the target's rear, which is why it gets the top face button. Kasha does additional damage from the target's flank, so I've placed it on one of the side face buttons. These placements help me remember those properties. On top of that, the terminating combo attacks are placed to loosely match the sen they grant on the sen gauge. Each location corresponds to a point on the triangle. Now, Samurai's AoE combos are simpler, but I've chosen to keep the dual trigger setup here too for a few reasons. On the right trigger, the combo opener, Fuko, replaces its single target counterpart on the left face button. The first AoE combo ends with Oka on the top button. On the left trigger, Mangetsu takes the spot on the left face button, following Fuko to complete Samurai's second AoE combo. These two positions again roughly correspond to the sen they grant on the sen gauge. Samurai only has three basic AoE attacks, and this is the first layout where I've spread them out like this. There are a few reasons for that, and the main one comes down to the importance of Samurai's off-global action, Meikyo Shisui. When activated, this lets all of Samurai's combo terminators grant their matching sen without needing to work through the full combo. That gives you a shortcut to building up the sen gauge, which means Meikyo Shisui ends up being used almost as often as the basic attacks. For that reason, I've given it a high priority spot on the left trigger's bottom face button. In my opinion, this placement is critical to becoming a high performing samurai, and I treat it as core as the basic attacks themselves. Also on the second hotbar set is Enpi, Samurai's most basic ranged attack. This placement mirrors my tank and dragoon layouts, and it takes some practice with set swapping before it clicks. Alright, that covers the placement of Samurai's primary attacks on the base hotbar across both sets. Let's fill in the remaining buttons. Hisatsu Gyoten is Samurai's gap closer, and I've given it the same spot on the left trigger that I dedicate to gap closers across all my layouts, for the sake of fast reaction time and muscle memory. Hisatsu Yaten is Samurai's gap opener, letting Samurai leap backward out of danger quickly. It takes the bottom D-pad button, matching the gap opener placements in my other layouts. On the right trigger's D-pad, I've placed Bloodbath and Leg Sweep, two melee DPS role actions. These placements make it easy to weave them in between basic attacks, and they stay consistent across my melee DPS layouts. On the single target set, Hisatsu Sene and Hisatsu Shinten take the other D-pad spots. These are off-global attacks that should be efficiently weaved in between Samurai's basic attacks. On the AoE set, we've got more room to work with. Shinten's AoE equivalent, Hisatsu Kyuten, takes the bottom face button, which lets a samurai keep moving when weaving it in between basic attacks from this location. Hisatsu Guren, the AoE replacement for Sene, takes the same spot on the top D-pad button. That leaves one extra D-pad button on the AoE set, and I've chosen to place a copy of Shoha there. Just like the other off-globals, this spot lets it be opportunistically weaved in between global cooldown attacks whenever its charge is available. Since the AoE set has fewer actions than the single target set, Guren and Shoha are both duplicated on the left trigger's D-pad as well, so they're easier to access from either trigger. Let's switch back to the single target set. Here, True North takes the top D-pad button, keeping things consistent with my other melee DPS layouts. I find myself reaching for True North most often right before using Gecko, since it removes the need to move behind the target first. Keeping it on the same trigger makes the two easier to use together, though it only takes a bit of extra effort to weave in before Kasha on the right trigger. Let's wrap up the base hotbars with Iaijutsu and Tsubame Gaeshi. Iaijutsu is used to perform Samurai's Sen attacks. It has a cast time, which means a samurai needs to stand still to use it, so a D-pad slot makes the most sense. I placed it on the left button. Tsubame Gaeshi repeats the prior Sen attack, but it has no cast time, it's instant. Because of that, its placement differs between the two hotbar sets. On the single target set, it takes the right D-pad button. Most often, a samurai will repeat a prior Sen attack immediately for a double strike, so this spot works well. It lets me move my left thumb from one button to the other in a single continuous motion. Since we have some extra room on the AoE set, I've placed it on the left trigger's final face button instead for a bit of extra mobility. That way, I can start moving my character with the analog stick as I kick off the second attack. If that asymmetry doesn't work for you, you can keep Tsubame Gaeshi on the D-pad in the AoE slot instead without giving up too much. So that covers the base cross hotbar across both sets. There's more complexity here than in other jobs, but give it a shot and see how it feels for you. There's also some flexibility to rearrange a few buttons to better suit your preferences. Let's move up to the double cross hotbar where things get a little simpler. On the left trigger's face buttons, I've placed the defensive actions Feint and Second Wind. Their situational use and longer cooldowns push them to the double cross hotbar, and their placement on the face buttons lets me keep moving when I need them. Tengetsu is Samurai's mini mitigation, and I've assigned it to the bottom face button. This matches the placement of similar abilities in my other layouts, lets me use it while moving, and makes it easy to combine with Samurai's other defensive actions. It has both a short cooldown and a short effect window, so practice using this often, especially ahead of a well-telegraphed enemy attack. Hagakure takes the final face button in this cluster. It burns off Samurai's accumulated Sen in exchange for charging the Kenki gauge. I typically use this either just before or just after an encounter in a dungeon, and keeping it on a face button lets me keep up with my party while doing that. Meditate requires a samurai to stand still while using it, so it's assigned to the D-pad. It makes the most sense to use during a lull in combat when you can't make direct attacks anyway, so its spot on the double cross hotbar fits well. Just like Tengetsu, don't forget it's there, use it when you can. Alright, we're almost done. On the right trigger's D-pad, I've placed arm's length in its default spot across all my layouts for the sake of muscle memory. If consistency across jobs isn't a priority for you, I'd recommend moving it to the final face button on this trigger instead, since there's still one free. Shoha takes what I'd consider its primary spot on the left face button. It also exists on the base hotbar in Samurai's AoE set, but the single target set has less room to work with, so it lands here instead. It's an off global, so weaving it in between single target attacks from the double cross hotbar may take a little practice. This location also makes it easier to weave in with Samurai's Ikishoten combo, which technically only uses 2 buttons, but I've chosen to spread it across 3. Ikishoten on the bottom face button activates the combo. This enables Oginami Kiri, which like Iaijutsu on the base hotbar has a cast time. I've placed it on a D-pad button to force myself to stop moving before using it. I've also placed a copy on the top face button for when it morphs into its second attack, Kaishi Namikiri. This second attack is instant. The pattern of these buttons matches the flow of Samurai's double strike on the base AoE hotbar, which helps keep things feeling consistent. Since there are multiple attacks in this combo, including Zanshin, Ikishoten's second off-global action, alternating between my left and right thumbs to execute it helps keep the whole thing feeling fluid. Give it a try and see what you think. If you'd rather simplify things, you can always drop Oginami Kiri from the D-pad and keep it only on the face button cluster. Now, just like my other layouts, I use the extended cross hotbar for actions that are used less often but are still important. Limit break, focus targeting, and target lock-on take their usual spots, matching all my other combat job layouts. I assign sprint to L3 via macro 98 and assist targeting to R3 via macro 99. If you need more info on setting those up, check out my general controller framework guide linked in the video description. Alright, we made it through. Hopefully my explanation was clear enough, as Samurai can be tricky to wrap your head around if you're coming in blind. Before I wrap up the video, let's do the demo. Just like my other layout demos, the goal here is to show the general flow of the layout in action. I'm not optimizing for maximum damage output. If this video helped you, doing all the typical YouTube stuff is always appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.